Hello, this is Zahil Alam. Welcome you all on Frankly Speaking. Our guest today is Stephen O'Brien MP, UK's Minister for International Development. He is on his first official visit here in Bangladesh to explore the Bangladesh's progress in reproductive, maternal and newborn health and discuss the challenges ahead for this country. Stephen O'Brien is the Conservative member of the British Parliament, and prior to his appointment at DFID as UK's Parliamentary Under Secretary of State for International Development, he was a Shadow Minister for Health and Social Care. Previously, he served as the Shadow Minister for Skills and Higher Education. He was Shadow Secretary of State for Industry, Shadow Minister for Treasury, Opposition Whip and Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Chairman of the Conservative Party. And he has been a member of the House of Commons Select Committee on Education and Employment. And he is currently visiting Bangladesh. I welcome Stephen O'Brien on Frankly Speaking.
Thank you very much, and Zahir. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much. We are delighted indeed. This is your first official visit in Bangladesh, and you have already visited some projects, especially in Rangpur, and you met some of the government leaders and officials, met some development partners, some NGO leaders. So overall, can you give us some idea about your experience, what impressions you have gathered so far after visiting so many areas and meeting so many peoples?
Well, it's always a great excitement to come to a country for the first time, and I feel very honoured to have the chance to come to Bangladesh. And I've spent my 3 days in Dhaka and up around Rangpur in the northwest. And I've had the opportunity to meet with both the Minister of Health and also the Minister for Finance. And it's been very helpful to get a real feel for the not only the current challenges, which of course every country in its own way faces challenges, but also the genuine achievements that have been achieved by Bangladesh over recent years. And so my overall impression is really twofold. First of all, that yes, there are many, many people in Bangladesh. It's a very intensely populated area, and that throws up its own opportunities as well as its own challenges. And secondly, I've witnessed through going to the programs both here in Dhaka and up around Rangpur some remarkable work being achieved by some very good people, both in the government service and also in various NGOs, and seeing an increased willingness to come together, to cooperate and coordinate so that they're delivering the very best for the people of Bangladesh who need services. And these basic services, there is a very high demand for them, and there is always a lot more that we can do.
Improving maternal health, reducing maternal and child mortality in Bangladesh is a big challenge, and there has been a lot of remarkable progress we have made so far. What are the other areas you experience genuine achievements Bangladesh have made in the health sector?
Well, I think what speaks for itself is for the last 10 years to have shown a 40% reduction in maternal mortality. I mean, these are spectacular figures, and therefore that we must try and bottle that up and make sure that gain is sustained. So one of the first things to do is to examine what has led to that success and how much more of that success can then be achieved to keep that very rapidly declining curve on the graph. Because these are real lives at the end of the day which we're dealing with, and it's really important we do that. So in many ways it's almost too broad to identify all the interventions that are going to lead to that. But a very useful and impressive example I came across was work which had been undertaken by WaterAid, a charity which is operating in coordination with the local government as well as the national government.
WaterAid is British funded.
It's a British funded NGO, and one which a lot of the people that I represent are very keen to support, and they like to see that it's making not only enormous progress and good work in the countries where there's a huge unmet need that needs to be fulfilled, but also to see that it's really pragmatic and practical and on the ground. And at Anantapur, just outside Rangpur, I went down to a village where the custom had been for open defecation. And whilst, of course, these are always subjects none of us want to talk about, it's absolutely vital for the health and the well-being of all the people in that village, for the men, but particularly the women and the children, who are always more prone to the health difficulties. And so it was very important to see that initiative, which has shown great leadership.
But do you think the projects which has been taken by WaterAid or British funded through DFID is enough to stop open defecation in different areas of Bangladesh?
Well, of course, all I can do is urge and hope that the villagers of Anandpur are going to maintain their very, very good record of having achieved what they've done so far, and that it is obvious that that example can now be replicated across many villages where that is no longer something which we want to see happen. But let's be absolutely clear, the British aid, the UK people whom I represent, we're very pleased to be a very significant partner for development for the people of Bangladesh, and we work with and through the government of Bangladesh and many other agencies, as well as making sure that we all come together with the NGOs to deliver these really tremendous results. And that's what really matters. If I have to convince the people who elect me to the UK Parliament, I need to demonstrate that using their money, it's not mine, that I am achieving real results that they can be proud of. And so making sure that the people of Bangladesh have access to clean drinking water, that there is a real commitment to hygiene and using soap and water, and making sure that the sanitation is in good shape. And then also there's access to medical facilities.
But how convinced you are about the, the way fund or money is being spent and transparently with sort of accountability? How do you see that?
Well, it's terribly important that we do have total transparency and accountability for the results. If you like, the money that is being donated by the UK, there are other countries who are also very significant donors for the aid budgets in Bangladesh, but also very essentially for the monies which the government of Bangladesh is able to raise through the internally generated revenues, equally the transparency and accountability of those monies. We all ride together on this. We all carry the same political risk, but at the same time we want to make sure that we can get rid of that risk by demonstrating to the people on the ground that they are really benefiting, because the money that is intended to reach that destination gets there. And so whenever there is corruption, and yes, corruption does happen, and it's something which none of us want to see, there has to be zero tolerance, and so we focused on that. And that means that I can then, as you did in your introductory remarks, I can then show the people who elect me into my parliament that yes, we are using a lot of their money to support the people of Bangladesh. We want to do that. It's an appropriate thing for us to do. We have a very strong diasporic community of the Bangladeshi people in our country, and there's a strong historic relationship which we want to maintain and to build upon. And so yes, we are committed to a Bangladesh partnership which is going to be one of the strongest in the world of the developing countries, one of the top 3 or 4. It'll all move about depending on the way it works, subject to review and results and making sure we're accountable and transparent for the money. So this will be about £1 billion over 4 years, where we want to achieve some real results. In fact, the reason I'm sitting here with a piece of paper, which is not my normal way of doing things, because I can actually
tell us something about new commitment.
Well, I'm going to tell you all about the results we're going to achieve, because of course the worst question, and therefore you won't get the answer, is just asking about the money, because that's not of particular interest. What matters is the results we're going to achieve.
The results and outcomes,
And so the outcomes we've said over the next 4 years we want to achieve are to help lift 5 million people out of extreme poverty. We want to ensure that 1.2 million women give birth safely with skilled carers. We want to help ensure that 1.5 million more girls and boys will complete primary school. And we want to provide access to safe water to 1.2 million more people. And if you like, that's the attribution of our proportion.
Are these goals are integrated with Millennium Development Goals separately?
It's one of the most inspiring things that's happened in the world today, is that we had in September 2010 last year a meeting in New York where, with 5 years of before the MDGs are due to hit into 2015, we ended up with a meeting saying, is it all too difficult, or should we reconfirm that we're going to go for it? And the world came together and said, we must go for it, we cannot slack. And so there's been a re-energized effort, new pledges, new commitments, which are focusing on where there's the greatest need, where we can make the greatest impact, all with great monitoring, evaluation, transparency and accountability to get to those results. And in our case, we've actually said that we will have a totally independent body to monitor and to account for the results, which won't report to ministers. It reports direct to our Parliament, to the Select Committee of our Parliament. So we have made it totally objective how these results, which we're part of, a significant part, and we're proud to be that, of the world's effort to try and bear down on the causes of poverty, on the effects of poverty, to lift people out of the burden that imposes upon them. And it's not just saving lives, but to give them opportunities, and also to address some of the pressing issues of our age. And the MDGs are a very good way.
Stephen, you know that the contribution of agriculture sector in Bangladesh particularly is huge, around 20% in the GDP. So do you see any assistance in developing agriculture sector in Bangladesh?
Well, already we're very engaged with what I think is called the Catalyst Programme, and that is engaging with smallholders and farmers across many markets, whether it's prawns and fish or wheat and whatever, and by a measured calculation, it's seen to have helped improve the incomes of farmers in Bangladesh by about a net income of about £97 million. Well, this is a significant rise in the return you get for your effort. And one of the things that is obvious, even in a country which is obviously very constrained for space, and it has a lot of its land under agricultural production, clearly with alluvial earth, you've got some pretty productive land. And so that's a good thing. And I haven't been anywhere in the country yet where I haven't seen the land being utilised in a very productive way. The question with all this activity is to also make it sufficiently profitable for people's time. And so it's looking very carefully at the genuine market forces that enable that to happen, and the release of controls sometimes which constrain that freedom.
Out of my personal curiosity, I know that you were a manufacturing industrialist.
I was.
Prior, but how do you see that? Is it crucial or is it critically important, depending on agriculture sector, to move further, given the given challenges Bangladesh is facing right now?
Well, it's a very good question, because it's also very complex. Agriculture, without question, engages the most number of people, and therefore if you're looking to have what I would describe as job-full growth, then you would have to focus on agriculture and the utilisation of the land, particularly with a population, as we know, which is a large population, and with the predictions that it is yet to rise significantly. And so in order to have the ability to optimise the amount of return from the land, you have to have very efficient, very productive use of that land. At the same time, you want to be attracting investment by not only overseas but within the country, internally generating and growing what is in general terms known as the middle class. Because if you can do that, as a manufacturing industrialist, it was my job to try and identify where to put my factory in the next country which is going to have the next middle class coming through. And those are the sort of products and building materials that I was engaged with. And so one looked, not as a businessman for the business opportunity, one knows one's business. What you do is you look for the context that's going to give you the confidence to invest.
Oh, we need to take a short break.
Okay.
Dear viewers, so we're going for a short break. We'll be back right after the commercial. Stay with us. Our guest is Mr. Stephen O'Brien, Minister for International Development from UK. Stay with us. Welcome back, dear viewers. You're watching Frankly Speaking. Our guest is Mr. Stephen O'Brien, British Minister. Mr. Minister, you know, Bangladesh is at high risk due to climate change. It's a very vulnerable country, and a lot of catastrophic consequences we're facing right now, actually. So, is there any program, is there any new plan from your department, your organizations, to support Bangladesh, to stand by the vulnerable people in Bangladesh?
There's no question that the environmental change, which is a consequence of climate change, is potentially very, very serious for Bangladesh, and that is well recognised internationally, and we recognise that no less. it's clear to me that Bangladesh is able to carry a lot of influence in the way that most people are now thinking about the agenda that should emerge out of Durban and be carried through to Rio. And I think that's useful. I think it's good because the number of people affected here by shifting alluvial deposits and the tracks and because there is also, I think, it's fair to say, a strong recognition that the Bangladesh government and the Bangladesh people have earned a very highly respected reputation for being extremely resilient in the face of often some pretty catastrophic natural phenomena and disasters. It's a large potential fund that we have in mind, but to make sure we use that to best impact, best effect. And so we're taking our time to make sure that we've looked and seen that through. So the way that Durban takes place is going to be very influential in trying to identify, instead of just doing country by country, that we look at the phenomena which of course span across borders. Climate change does not respect a political border, or indeed it doesn't respect any particular political point of view. And so it's an issue which is way above party politics, even national boundaries, and we need to get our strength of thinking and policy application to meet that by raising our sights above our normal parochial concerns.
You met with our health minister.
Yes.
You did have a new commitment for over the last 5 years, up to 2016. It's total sum I heard, I don't know whether it's correct or not, £311 million over the next 5 years. So what are the areas you are particularly focusing on or emphasizing on, and you want the government to perform well on that areas?
Well, what we're particularly focused on is that we've announced, whilst I've been here, that the UK government is pleased on the back of the success of bringing down maternal mortality down 40% over 10 years.
You mentioned earlier.
Yes, that programme is coming to an end, so now we have to look at the next stage. And so we've announced £100 million to take that forward. And so that over the next 5 years, plus we also indicated a £10 million fund for technical assistance and making sure that we really get the research and evidence bound into the way we operate, plus a £10 million challenge fund. So this is significant to ensure that we maintain the progress of bringing down maternal mortality, on looking after the neonates. I was able, when I went to the medical college in Rangpur, to see the neonates in the little incubators and being kept alive when they're very premature. I mean, of course, this is heartwarming, but at a really fundamental level of service, this is what we need to be doing in order to make sure that the very best is available to all, and to ensure that reaches out to the rural areas. Equally, it was very impressive, I think, to see some of the work that is helping address some of the issues that are as much social as they are medical. So I, this afternoon, was able to visit the acid survivors, and these are all parts of the programmes that we want to see maintained in order to bear down on what are avoidable conditions.
We know, Minister, that UK is one of the largest bilateral grant donor for Bangladesh. If I ask you to tell about the health sector governance, are you very satisfied with the way the health sector is moving on in Bangladesh?
Well, it's very interesting speaking to the Minister of Health, because the recognition that so much of what can be achieved is rooted in the community means that the greater decentralisation of the delivery of services is really producing results. And of course, every time you move money and you have people who need to do things, you have to focus on what is likely to incentivise the best behaviours in people. And I was really impressed to see there's a big effort to encourage doctors to be in their community medical facilities. Yes, I was pretty satisfied, if we want a straight answer, but I'm absolutely convinced and sure that we can always do better, we can always do more. But the question is deploying the resources to the places where you know you're going to achieve best effect.
Do you think the aid is a long-term solution for the poor to get them out from grinding poverty, especially in Bangladesh?
Well, I hope that it's become clear since certainly as a new team within the DFID ministry, the three of us have been in for 17 months now, that we made it very clear that where you have humanitarian need, you must meet with a humanitarian response. So that is according to the emergency, it is immediate and so forth. But where you have programs, where you have bilateral programs, a very strong one as we have here in Bangladesh, where you have multilateral support, and so a lot of the support that we give to the world organizations, we have an attribution, of course, as to what we give to those. That is also being used in part for Bangladesh and its people, and we're really pleased about that. What matters is that there is a real sense of trajectory where we're all aiming, although sometimes we can't tell how long it will take, we're all aiming to graduate from aid, because that shows we've been successful in what we're doing. It means we are doing what we set out to do. The money is reaching its destination and it is relieving poverty, so it is not just saving lives and increasing well-being, access to the right basic services, but it's also meaning we must have mitigated and adapted to the climate change threat sufficient that that's not put people off course, and it's given them a leg up in the wealth creation stakes, so that they're all now beginning to find a way of contributing to their economy, that the revenue collection is sufficient to therefore generate those internally generated revenues, and as a result, competing in the world, that they can then, through a democratically transparent elected government, they can choose how to use those exchequer revenues to deploy to the best effect of their competitive nation. And so those have a very strong logic about them, and we're really keen to make sure that all our programs, whatever the short-term focus, however much we drive for results, that over time, whether it takes you 5 years or 45 years, we have a graduation from aid story, because that will give people confidence and will become a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You're not only a minister, you are a pianist, an artist. So how did you see the people in Bangladesh?
Well, I think they're a very warm and welcoming people, and I've been absolutely thrilled with the opportunity I've had to be here. It's been an extremely positive and heartwarming experience. It's also been very humbling. I've met many people who are in very grave circumstances, have nonetheless found a way of being positive, and I mentioned earlier the Acid Survivors Foundation. I was particularly inspired by their courage and their hope, and I think it's wonderful what's being done there. And so I think that as a result, I have already formed extremely fond feelings for Bangladesh and its people. I think it would be extremely wise for the Bangladesh people not to ask me to play the piano, because that would offend all the ears that might want to hear it. So I think we can avoid that. But
thank you.
It's been a great pleasure.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Minister,
Thank you.
for being with us today. Dear viewers, the visiting DFID Minister has reaffirmed the UK's commitment to help Bangladesh reduce child and maternal mortality and achieve faster progress on nutrition. Thank you so much for watching our program, and we invite you to watch our next episode. Until then, to take care and goodbye.